When it comes to designing, especially workshops, there's a lot of ways to go about it. However, for today, I want to hit on one that seems so obvious, but I feel like as a field we tend to miss, especially with how things are presented in school. But the idea is, how can we start designing with integration in mind over just application? Application is important, but it tends to be isolated. Here's a skill. Let's talk about the skill, the science behind the skill, why the skill itself is important, and then figure out how we can apply it. And that misses a lot. And the reason being is you're asking a lot of the client or the audience to be able to figure out what you're saying. Uh, but if we shift to more of an integration philosophy behind it, now we're going to use their experiences first. And I'll break down what that means in a second. But when you do that, you're really making it easier to learn, apply, and just better utilize the skills we're trying to provide them, right, to find solutions. And the reason this is so passionate area of mine when it comes to designing as well is I still remember it's about 10 years ago working on an Army contract, and we were doing a leadership training. And the intent of the training was to educate them on what we were providing their soldiers. And so it was a mental skills program overview, for lack of better words. We had a foundations program. We worked through each of the primary areas around attention and arousal, and it was all fun. Everybody always had a good time with it. It was very hands-on. But I remember being in the middle of day two and just looking over the room. And although everyone was having fun, I just remember catching a couple people who were just kind of doodling on their pad or looking at their watch, having their coffee. And I asked them what was missing. And it was a very respectful conversation. But they just said, "This is really fun. We all enjoy coming to these things because it's just so much different than our other training. But I really got a lot of paperwork to do. And so it's just kind of hard. So I'm just taking notes on what I have to do after this." And that really resonated with me. And so I asked the room, we're just going to stop. And I asked them just to share their day to day. And we were writing things down. What are the biggest challenges you have? We were writing some of those down. And I just said, if we lead with that and show how our skills can help address that, would that be of more interest to you? And of course, it was resounding yes. And this idea of integration then started to come to mind. Now, there's more layers to it than just that, but really leading with the audience's experiences is a really elemental part to elevating how we provide our training. And that also ties to learning too. If we think about adult learning theory in older populations, when we teach something, they have to make meaning of it. And they're going to make meaning of it by linking it to something that they've already done in the past. So there's a lot of pieces here that really kind of come to play if we can focus on integration. So a couple things to keep in mind, and this is important. When we're training a skill, what are the opportunities for it to be embedded within existing processes of the sport and the athlete? And this is the number one area that I see our field just swing and miss on a lot. Because it's one thing to say, training within context. Yeah, I get it, is what I hear a lot. But the idea of existing processes still gets missed. So, for example, during a game, they're already trying to manage their attention. So, why are we bringing in attention control as the leading topic versus looking at what are things you're already doing to manage your attention? And now that I have a sense of that, here's something that I think can elevate what you're already doing. So you're getting a chance to see the team culture dynamic and what's already in play, as well as how the athlete's handling it. And this can be done across competition and training and practice. But just be observant. What are the opportunities to integrate it within it? Because then psychology, we're lifting and elevating what's in place versus making it feel like they have to learn another thing. And it seems subtle, but it makes all the difference. So looking at it from the sport and the team and the individual athlete is step one to this. So here's three pillars to make this more concrete. As you're brainstorming and trying to design things, here's three areas that always help. Of course, the topic, right? Start with the topic. Whether it's something to do with managing errors or arousal. Like there's a reason why you need to deliver a workshop or a training session. So what is that topic? But then as we're reflecting on the topic, and by the way, this topic conversation is its own training session we'll do as well. There's a whole brainstorm strategy around that. But as you're thinking about the topic, then you can kind of look at, how are the athletes experiencing this? How's the team experiencing this? And that'll give you some more ideas when it comes to, okay, now that I understand the topic that I think they need, but how are they experiencing that topic? Now I can start looking at existing processes. So, what is in place? As a team, what are they doing? As a sport, what are the natural ebbs and flows, quiet time, uptime, where there could be some real opportunity here to integrate some of this? And then, of course, what I would recommend last, the specific skill or strategy that you're going to bring to the table as a solution, because it's going to change how you look at that skill or strategy when you reflect on the topic and existing processes first. So here's a little bit more of a breakdown. When we're looking at the topic, we really want to pay attention to the situation that's really requiring our support. It just makes it immediately relevant. Um, so, for example, instead of talking about attention control in baseball, we're going to talk about your approach at the plate. That's the leading topic, right? They understand that, they get it, they know exactly what that means. We're going to break down your approach at the plate, and then we'll probably weave in components of attention to help them manage their at bat more effectively. But it makes it immediately relevant for the client. Here comes the existing processes, though. When you're looking at a competitive game or competition, right? So some sports, maybe it's more event driven um, versus a game, terminology wise. What are the natural opportunities to integrate this within a competition? So if it is baseball, dugout, between the innings, between the pitches, maybe there's some opportunities there. Um, if it is track events, right, looking at the nature of the event itself, what are the natural opportunities, even within a sprint event where it's only 100 meters, what are the opportunities there to really integrate something within their race so they can optimally manage it to their best potential? That's within competition. But then what are some other natural opportunities over the course of a season? So what does a practice week look like? What does that entail? And so what would be the optimal times then to integrate some of these things? And I just threw some examples in there around attention and energy, focusing, learning. But the existing processes of the team and sport is a great way to start, because then we can just look at how do we use the sport to our advantage. So it's easier for our clients to integrate our skill. Then looking at the processes of the athlete. Now, I do want to make a caveat on this, because we do check in with an athlete and say, have you used imagery? What's your knowledge of imagery? But I would still encourage you not to take that direct approach. You can be a little bit more directed to the performance. So, how are you managing your attention during competition? What are the things you're doing to manage your energy? How do you make adjustments? And then if you want to bring imagery in, imagery is the solution to that situation versus trying to check on their learning of, well, have you used a mental skill before? And the reason I say that is if they say yes and they didn't like it, you now have an uphill battle to get them bought back in. So make it easier on yourself as the consultant. So thinking about the existing processes of the sport and the team can really help design the tone and the context of delivering a workshop. And so as we summarize this briefly, as you're starting to design, reflect on the topic area, but with the sport and the athlete experiences in mind, because that'll give you ideas for how you title your workshop, stories you might want to tell, examples you might raise. It really helps front load that to get people bought in and grabbing their attention. And then considering the existing processes really helps with the habit development, the motivation to practice, to try it, because it makes it less intimidating. I'm already doing a film study routine, for example, if it's football. Well, now I'm just providing that athlete a little checklist to follow while they're watching film, right? It makes it simpler. It's less daunting to try and pick a skill up, learn it because they're a beginner to that skill, and then figure out how to apply it. But then lastly, then that way, when you do get to the skill itself, because eventually in a workshop, we are teaching a skill or strategy, it's the solution that makes the most sense, right? It's easily integrated, but the context is already there, and you're literally just saying, here you go. So, just some things to consider when you're trying to design an effective workshop where you can get a little bit more buy in into what you're doing. Hope this helps. Thanks.